empath becomes darker when they realize the narcissist used them. Have you ever wondered what happens when one of the kindest and most emotionally generous people finally realizes that their love was never truly valued, but was simply being used for someone else's benefit? What happens when an empath discovers that the person they fought for, defended, and sacrificed for was never interested in a genuine connection, but only in receiving endless attention and validation? The answer surprises most people because the empath does not simply walk away heartbroken and defeated. Instead, they become stronger, wiser, and far more difficult to manipulate than they have ever been before. An empath enters relationships with a deep desire to understand people on a level that most individuals never even attempt to reach. They naturally search for the good in others and often focus on someone's potential rather than paying attention to their harmful behavior. When a narcissist enters their life, the empath often believes that enough patience, understanding, and unconditional love can help that person become better. This belief keeps the empath invested long after the relationship begins damaging their emotional well-being. Every lie gets excused as insecurity, every betrayal gets justified as emotional pain, and every red flag gets explained away because the empath wants to believe the best. The narcissist quickly recognizes something extremely valuable in the empath and understands how much emotional energy they are willing to give. Unlike most people who eventually establish firm boundaries, the empath continues giving even when they receive almost nothing in return. The narcissist learns that they can disappear, return, create confusion, and still be welcomed back without facing serious consequences. Over time, the relationship becomes increasingly one-sided as the empath carries all the emotional weight, while the narcissist enjoys all the benefits. The empath believes they are building a meaningful bond, while the narcissist is often maintaining a reliable source of emotional supply. One day, something begins to change because the empath starts noticing patterns that can no longer be ignored. They realize that their needs were only important when those needs benefited the narcissist in some way. They notice that every conversation somehow circles back to the narcissist's problems, emotions, desires, and frustrations. They begin seeing how their own feelings were repeatedly dismissed, minimized, or completely overlooked. Slowly, the illusion starts breaking apart and the painful truth begins revealing itself. The empath realizes that they were investing in a relationship that was never as genuine as they believed. This realization hurts far more than the relationship ending because it destroys the story they created in their mind. They grieve the future they imagined and the person they hoped the narcissist would eventually become. They mourn the countless sacrifices they made, believing they were helping build something meaningful. They begin understanding that love cannot heal someone who has no desire to change themselves. As this truth sinks deeper into their awareness, something powerful starts transforming inside them. Many people call this transformation darkness, but that description misses what is really happening. The empath is not becoming cruel or heartless because they are simply becoming aware. Their endless patience starts turning into wisdom that can recognize manipulation much faster. Their blind compassion evolves into discernment that helps them separate genuine people from selfish ones. Their emotional softness becomes protected by boundaries that are finally strong enough to keep them safe. To the narcissist, this change feels shocking because the empath no longer responds in predictable ways. The person who once tolerated everything suddenly begins questioning behavior that never made sense. The person who once forgave endlessly starts holding people accountable for their actions. The person who once chased explanations stops chasing altogether and begins choosing peace instead. The narcissist often mistakes this growth for bitterness because they can no longer benefit from the empath's kindness. What they call coldness is often self-respect that was missing for far too long. What they call distance is often healthy boundaries finally being enforced. What they call attitude is often confidence replacing fear and self-doubt. One of the biggest changes occurs when the empath completely changes their relationship with trust. They stop trusting people based solely on words and begin paying attention to consistent actions. Promises no longer impress them because experience has taught them that actions reveal true intentions. They learn that trust should be earned through behavior rather than handed out freely. This new awareness makes them much harder to manipulate in future relationships. Another reason the empath appears darker is because they stop expecting everyone to possess the same heart that they do. They no longer assume that everyone values honesty, loyalty, and emotional responsibility. They stop projecting their own good intentions onto people who have not earned that belief. This shift protects them from repeated disappointment and unnecessary emotional pain. Many empaths also experience a period of intense anger after realizing how deeply they were used. For years, they ignored their own pain because they were focused on understanding someone else's pain. They silenced their frustration because they feared being perceived as selfish or unkind. When the truth finally arrives, all that suppressed emotion begins rising to the surface. This anger is not a sign of becoming toxic because it is often a sign of finally acknowledging reality. It becomes the fuel that helps them rebuild their confidence and reclaim their identity. The empath starts understanding that being kind does not require tolerating disrespect. They learn that compassion without boundaries often leads directly to self-destruction. They realize that giving endlessly to the wrong people only creates exhaustion and resentment. Most importantly, they discover that protecting themselves is not selfish but necessary. The narcissist often struggles to recognize this new version of the empath because everything has changed. The empath no longer explains themselves repeatedly to people determined to misunderstand them. They no longer beg for honesty from people who repeatedly choose deception. They no longer sacrifice their peace to maintain relationships that only survive through their effort. Instead, they walk away from situations that threaten their emotional well-being. Instead, they choose themselves even when others accuse them of being different. Instead, they prioritize their mental health over someone else's approval. In the end, the empath does not become darker in the way most people imagine. They do not lose their heart, their compassion, or their ability to love deeply. What they lose is their willingness to be used by people who never appreciated them. What disappears is the version of themselves that believed everyone deserved unlimited chances. The darkness others notice is often nothing more than strength they have never seen before. It is the strength of someone who finally understands their worth and refuses to settle for less. It is the strength of someone who recognizes manipulation and chooses not to participate in it. It is the strength of someone who has suffered enough to know exactly what they will never tolerate again. And for the narcissist who once benefited from that endless kindness, nothing is more shocking than watching an empath finally choose themselves.